familiar faces, but a lot of faces I haven't seen yet, so yeah. Welcome to our day here at the Heritage Center. So today I'm going to talk to you about the Canadian Agricultural Partnership, and also I'm going to focus a little bit on irrigation development. How many people here in the room that are irrigators or irrigate right now? Just a show of hands. Okay. Okay, how about somebody who wants to irrigate who's not irrigated yet? Okay, so okay. All right. So I'll touch briefly on these programs, and then we'll get into some of the development process. So the Canadian Agricultural Partnership, it's $388 million worth of investment, and that's partnership by the federal government and the provincial government. 60% from the federal government and 40% from the provincial government. This is a 5-year program. It began last year in 2018, so we basically finished year 1 already, and then it ends in 5 years. The irrigation program. So in this suite of programs, this next 5 years, we actually have a dedicated irrigation program with that. So part and parcel of that, we have irrigation development, as well as an irrigation environmental program with that. And we'll get a little bit into the irrigation development and the CAP program. So the irrigation development program, that's for all the irrigators within the province, and they're treated, both the district irrigators and the irrigators that are outside of irrigation districts are treated the same. And so in order to be eligible for this funding, the district and non-district irrigator, they need to set up an irrigation pivot in order to be eligible for that. The second part of the suite of programs is the environmental best management practices, or the BMPs. And so those are for existing systems, existing irrigation projects that are out there. And those are conversion from flood irrigation to pivot. So we'd like you to use your water a little bit better. Convert to a low pressure center pivot. There's funding for that. There's also some funding for high to low pressure nozzles, and also variable rate irrigation. And we'll get to some of those in a little bit more detail later here. So the irrigation development program. So all farmers are eligible for that within an irrigation district and outside. Irrigation districts themselves are not currently eligible. So it's just the individual irrigators inside the districts. Now the cost sharing, as you can see there on the slide, there is 67% government funded and 33% from the individual. And there's a $1,320 cap per acre. That's per irrigable acre, and that maxes out at $300,000. So if you're thinking about developing, especially the new guys and the guys who have irrigated acres already, put together a sketch what you want to do, and call our office in Outlook. There's a number you want to remember, 867-5500, and one key person's name you want to remember is Randy Holman. And Randy is just back in the back there. He heads up our technologist unit, and he will kind of guide you through the process and help you with your irrigation project. And also I wanted to mention, funding is somewhat limited. We kind of allocated around $10 million to this project to this program over 5 years. And that includes both development and the irrigation efficiencies. And right now we've kind of viewed it as a first come, first serve on approved applications. So you need to fill out an application form, and then you need to send it into the programs branch in Regina, and then there's kind of an approval process that happens there as well. So make sure that you fill it out and fill out all the spaces, whatever, and send in the necessary information with your application. Because if something's missing, then that'll delay your application. Okay. Any questions on that so far? Okay, so the next slide, we're going to talk about the irrigation development process in Saskatchewan. And just a bit of a side note, on January 10th, we kind of had an irrigation, kind of a development process streamlining meeting with a bunch of the irrigation industry proponents. And we talked about a number of things. We've come away with a few quick wins, and then also possibly another project that we want to do on a more of a kind of a pilot project, I guess, on a long-term basis, and we really haven't looked in that in huge depth yet, but that'll be coming. So the first step, if you're within an irrigation district, the first thing you need to do is go to your district office and talk to the manager there, talk to the administrator, and they will let you know if the land that you're wanting to irrigate is irrigable or not, which is very important. And then also, part and parcel of that is there an adequate water supply? So maybe you're coming off a gravity canal. Some of the pipeline districts, you'd be coming off one of the main lines. So is there actually water available for your parcel of land? And another important thing to think about is drainage. As some of the more irrigable acres get used up, we have some of the more marginal acres that you may want to bring on stream as well. Make sure that you talk to your district about drainage and what capacity they have within their system as well, because you'll be tying into their district drain. And so you need board approval for your project. And so just a bit of an emphasis here. If you do not go to your irrigation district first, you run the risk of your project not being approved, or if you jump ahead and try to get ahead of the queue, there might be issues with that. So make sure you talk to your district. So for individuals outside of districts, as I mentioned before, kind of do a SketchUp of your project and then call the ministry office 867-5500 and talk to Randy. And that kind of ends step one. Step two is the water supply assessment, and this mostly applies to people who are irrigating out of water bodies that are not, say, from a lake that has good quality water, such as Lake Diefenbaker. So send in a water sample to our office, drop it off, whatever the case may be, and then our office will send that water sample away and determine if the water is actually compatible for irrigating. And I imagine maybe one of the other folks will get into that as well a little bit further. And then for district development, once again, make sure there's enough water available for your project. Step three, inspection, surveying, and feasibility. So back in step one, the individual irrigator has filled out a request for technical assistance, has sent it into our office. We know that you have a project. Maybe you've communicated with Randy or one of his guys. You know, Travis is here, Ed is here. I thought I saw him. Yes. Okay, so you've had a chance to communicate with our office. And so now the ministry will actually come on site to your project and kind of have an inspection. We'll get a determination if that project is even feasible right off the get-go. So he'll look at the water supply, they'll look at the irrigated parcel that you want to irrigate, possibly what land you have to come through, and things like that. Basically, it's just kind of is the project feasible or not? And so if the project seems feasible, then we get into step 4, and this is the irrigation certificate. So if the water available is of sufficient quality and quantity, and so those two things are very important to make sure you have the right quality and the right quantity of water. The ministry will then, our agronomy services unit, and so Jay and Brittany, who else? And Darren. So their group will come out and they'll actually sled the soil and determine if the if your land is actually irrigable or not. Is there a lot of salinity and such like, and Jay will get into that. So if the soil is suitable, an irrigation certificate will be issued. And then step 5, so our group in Outlook, so Randy's group, the technologist group, will put together a preliminary irrigation plan. And that shows the general layout of your recommended irrigation equipment. So it shows your water source, you have a pump well, a main line, and then your pivot point. It shows how many acres you're going to irrigate and such like. And so one of the things we discussed back in January 10th at that meeting to kind of streamline our process was, and water security really mentioned this, is one of the biggest hang-ups with irrigation development, especially with individual projects, is land control. So who knows what land control means? What do we mean by land control? So basically land control is, do you have the proper authority to run your irrigation pipeline from the water source to the edge of your parcel? And in some instances you may have to cross crown land or government-owned land, environmental land, or you may have a neighbor that you're going to have to deal with as well. So it's very important that you consider these things when developing your irrigation project. So our thought is here is on this irrigation plan, we'll have another drawing, another sheet that shows you, okay, you have to talk to Government of Saskatchewan on this piece of land, you talk to Joe Farmer on this piece, and whoever. So, and that gives, and then right away you can start those discussions to get land control. And then step 6, and this applies to non-district irrigator approval. So once you've reached that point, you've got your irrigation plan together, you're satisfied with what equipment you need, then you submit another application. So you have to go online to the Saskatchewan Water Security Agency site and fill out a form. Lovely form, okay? And that is for an approval to construct. So in order to actually do any work on your irrigation project, Water Security will give you an authority or an approval to construct your irrigation project. So that's very important as well. If you have any questions about that, you can also talk to our office staff as well, and they can kind of help you with that. And one of the things we were thinking of there as well is to include some forms and some links in some of the letters and with the plans that get sent out to you to kind of help with that. And then step 7, you would construct your works. And that's once again done once you've received your approval to construct. And then for district irrigators, once the district has given approval and the irrigation certificate is received, then the project can be constructed. And note that in irrigation districts there might be some specific guidelines that they have regarding your project, maybe in regards to drainage works, supply works, etc., and how they all tie into your system. And then the last step is the survey and inspection. So your project's all together. You've got your pivot up. You'll notify the ministry, and they'll come out there and do a kind of an as-built drawing survey. And then once that's done, then you can submit the plan to Water Security Agency, and I believe we do it on your behalf. The ministry does. And then a water rights license and approval to operate will be issued. So that's kind of the 8-step process in a nutshell. I went over it fairly quick.
I have a question about land control. So are you asking for an easement or just a handshake? You need something formal?
A formal easement is preferred. Okay. And so we could actually send you out like sample easements that you may want to sign with your neighbor, get it witnessed by a notary public and that type of thing.
Okay, thanks.
And that's, yeah, thanks for the question, because that is a key issue, and that's something we're really trying to figure out. Any other questions?
Can you expand or let us know what maybe wouldn't qualify under your $1,320, like main line to the edge of the field, power to the field, that's good.
Right, okay, so that's, actually, I'll get that in, this next slide actually shows, and I've got two examples, one's an individual, type of a development, and the other one is kind of a multi-producer. So CAP covers the cost from the water source, and from here we see there's a canal there, and that could be a lake or water body. Hopefully it's not a slough, we don't like sloughs too much. Sloughs are typically drainage projects. So we will cost share the cost from the water body, and so that includes your intake, your wet well, your power to that source, and then the main line from the water source to the edge of your parcel. So that's kind of in a broad terms what we will cover, and we will cover 67% of that. And as far as eligible costs, so 67%, and that's $1,320 per acre, to a maximum of $300,000. Here, I'm giving more money away.
You said to the edge, not to the middle pivot point.
Correct, to the edge. Yeah. So anything on your own parcel is considered on farm, and the farmer's responsibility.
So have they, I noticed you didn't mention electrical, have they changed that now? We're not gonna cover electrical anymore to the edge of the field?
My understanding is that we'd actually, because you need to power your pivot as well, you'd cover the electrical to the edge of the parcel as well.
It is covered?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's what I wanted to know.
That's how I would view it. And then, go ahead.
So, would cost be covered if you're crossing your own land? Like to a certain quarter, that's gonna have
To the edge of your parcel, if you have to come across one or two of your own quarters or three of your neighbor's quarters, yes, that's all covered. 67% to that maximum of 300,000.
So is that covering of the power cable that's new for this job?
No, is it? I know there's been some contention about but essentially you need power to the edge of to service your pivot. Just like you need water, just like you need anything else. And I should also mention that drainage is covered as well. So if you need to drain something on your parcel, we will cover from the edge of your parcel to the adequate outlet. Nothing on farm. So you have to put a sump on your farm, and then after that, if the sump's outside your parcel, there's probably some wiggle room there, but yeah. So drainage is covered as well.
What about on your water source? The project I'm looking at would need like a reservoir. We had this discussion, we're not sure, it sounds like it's a gray area. You like say pump from the river to get a water source, you know, a reservoir, lake, whatever you want to call it. That you know, may or may not be on our land or whatever, but funding for that.
We'd have to submit your application, we'd have to review that. I guess if it's part of the project, it's like, in a sense, maybe putting a canal in or a pipeline, we'd have to review that and see. I know there's other funding under FERWIP for dugouts, excuse me. But yeah, Randy, any input on that one?
We have funding.
We have? Okay, yeah, so we have funding dugouts.
You say to the edge of the parcel,
Right.
the closest one, I presume.
Yes. No, that's not even true too. Actually, there's funding. Here's a multi-producer example, which maybe can explain that question a bit as well. So same thing, funding from the water source to the edge of the parcel and the edge of the furthest parcel, really is what it would be.
Okay.
And so in this instance, maybe there's 4 different irrigators who want to kind of pool their money together. We've got 4 parcels of land in one place, so we'll put in a main line together. Maybe we've got to bring power to the water source and power to the edge there, so we can run our pivots as well. And so we'll cover those costs, like the wet well intakes, the pump and motor. Maybe you need a little pump station as well near the water source. Maybe some drainage requirements. Maybe because this project is big and maybe we need to build a huge reservoir, then maybe there's some engineering or consulting costs as well. We'll cover that as well. And so, once you pool your money together, it's still the same, that's $1,320 per irrigated acre, to a maximum of $300,000 per individual. So that's how we do that.
So if there's 4 producers here, they could conceivably apply for 1.2 million?
Correct. That's the way I see it, yes. And then you'd have to divvy it up, like in some instances here, like you might, all 4 of them would cover the cost of the main line to this point, and then this individual producer would cover this cost to the edge of his quarter, whatever it may be, and this one to the edge of his parcel. So there's different ways we would need to look at that, and that's why it's important. These are pre-approval again. So you fill out your application, you send it into our office, or send it to programs, and then they send it to us, we review it, and we would have to approve it before you can even go ahead with it. So if there's any questions, you could talk to Randy or one of the guys in the office. If you're any question at all, what's covered and what's not covered.
Just a question on an approved project, is the funds then allocated, like if they don't do it that month?
Good question. Right now, the way the program's set up is once you have an approved project, you have 18 months to do your project. And because funding is limiting, we've been discussing in our office a little bit about this. So if you're number 58 on the approved list, and somebody who's at number 25 didn't approve their project, didn't go ahead, they didn't spend the money, then they're out, and then number 58 would move into the queue. So I really want to emphasize that 18 months. So when you get approval, and when you submit your application, you get approved, you got 18 months to do your project. And if I was irrigating, I'm not, if I was irrigating, I would get my application in right away, and I'd get my system up as quickly as possible so I could get the money. We haven't run out of money yet, but we're roughly on track about $1 million per year with the individual projects. So, and we have roughly $2 million a year to allocate to it.
How does Saskatchewan construction fit into that time frame?
Yeah, good question. So in that instance, maybe you want to get your project, obviously, like go through our system, but don't apply to CAP yet, and then get your power. But the thing is, problem is you want to get fund approval before you go ahead anyway. There's exceptions to the rule, but that is an issue. That's a big issue.
Yeah.
So maybe want to talk to Saskatchewan next time and see what you can do.
So in the event the 10 million runs out, is there some of that 378 remaining money that can be shuffled over?
I'm not sure, it depends on program adoption. And who knows, because in other areas of the overall CAP funding, if something's underfunded, they might say, well, go ahead, but I know they've been pretty stingy about the money this time, so. You know, it seemed more flexible when we were under FRWIP, Farm Ranch Water Infrastructure Program, Growing Forward 1, Growing Forward 2, the previous programs that some of you might be aware of.
Stan, I think you might have to look at ways to get around this Saskatchewan thing, because you might go through all the approvals, and they may tell you, in fact, they even may give in writing that they'll have it done by a certain time, and then it doesn't happen. So it's not your fault, and it's not your fault, but you can't control when they're gonna do it. So you still need to stay in the queue somehow or another.
Sure. No, that's a point well taken. I think that's something we'll have to discuss back at the office and see how we're gonna handle that. And maybe they'll be the exception. Maybe we'll have to talk to Saskatchewan. So any other questions on funding and what's eligible, what the limits are?
This guy was doing say a project with 2 pivots 1 year, and wants to size pipe for potentially more down the road. Would you approve the oversized pipe, or how does that go?
There's been some talk of that. Randy, maybe you could talk about a little bit. What we would prefer is that you would develop both pivots and then we pay you out when you're done. Because the problem is if you delay, then how are we gonna it's hard for us to tie that money up if we have 30 other guys wanting that money. You know, so we've allocated our money up to, 10 million or whatever, and somebody else wants in and you're delaying it, not good. So we need to be fair to everybody. And if someone, it's like, we don't want you to be a dog in a manger. Like, I'm not gonna hoard this money and I'm not gonna do anything because the value of my land went up.
So you wouldn't pay out to all, like, four in that example, like that, if you couldn't get.
That's our preference, yes. I'm speaking like a politician.
Like the second phase.
We have, let me interject there, Stan.
Yeah.
We have on an individual basis, if the individual has paid up his soils and has his irrigation certificate on 3/4 of land, but he's only planning on developing 2, we will pay for that oversized pipe to accommodate that third pit. Because we look at it as future development that may be the next year. And we can't base it on, you're not gonna have any money down the line, you're planning for the future too, so. I don't wanna see you guys have to go back and dig another line in to accommodate that third pit. So, as long as the certification is there for all quarters, that's how we've done it in the past, is pay for that oversized pipe for that.
So work with us, talk to us on an individual basis, and then we'll have to evaluate it. But really, the government wants to see acres go up. Like, we want to see pivots, we want to see irrigation water put on the land. That really is our bottom line. And that's how we get evaluated on the program as well, the effectiveness of the program. So work with us on an individual basis, but the encouragement is, and the dealers, well, you'll sell more as well, so. Anthony, you had a question?
It was a similar question, just like over engineering, because like in the past, we've had pivot where your engineers said 12-inch, we put in 15, just so you can know water down the, so faster laps, but that would still be covered then.
I would say, yeah, and work with our individuals.
It's just,
yeah,
not any extra acres, it's just over engineering.
Work on individual basis. Any other questions? I'm pretty well out of time here, and I was gonna talk a little bit about some of the other, I'll talk about the irrigation efficiency program. So this is for existing infrastructure that's out there, existing pivots. So this program supports improved energy and water efficiencies in irrigation systems, converting from high pressure nozzles to low pressure nozzles, conversion from gravity or wheel moves to low pressure center pivots as well. Even the old combustion powered engine, diesel, natural gas, or propane, you want to convert that to electric. And so we'll also cover costs to get that power line there to convert to electric, and also variable rate irrigation equipment. And so the eligible cost, 30% of eligible costs to a maximum of $50,000. And once again, a pre-approval is required. So you fill out an application, you send it in to programs branch, and then our office gets it. We will have a look at it, and one of our guys, Travis, Ed, or Barry, will head out there and they'll actually inspect your system and see what you qualify for. Any questions on that?
I've got one on that. So in the instance where someone has a older high pressure pivot out there and they want to replace it, are they able to apply through this program for the sprinkler package on that and the variable rate equipment?
My thought would be yes, yeah, because you're going from a high pressure to a low pressure. But if you physically replace the pivot, then that would be probably on the farmer's dime, but then we would, yeah, help.
As long as we can say, make it out on the sheet.
Right, exactly, yeah. So your nozzles and whatever your variable rate is on a kind of a separate invoice, so we can track that, yes. Yeah.
There's not a per acre limit on this one on a flood or wheel line conversion, because there's some of those that are kind of small.
No, it's 30% to a maximum of 50,000. So once you max out at 50,000, then that's what your limit would be.
So On this one, I've heard of an instance where somebody's wanting to get water rights and put irrigation up, and someone else has the water rights in that area to they're not allowing the new guy in because of the water rights. They can't get water rights on their land, and the other guy hasn't run his pivot for almost 10 years.
Yes, that could happen. It's very frustrating for the guys who want to irrigate and those that are tying up the water rights licenses. You could maybe have a discussion with water security and they might go shoulder tap the guy and say, hey, you better irrigate here, there's other guys who want this water. Whether that'll help or not, I don't know. Okay. I'll maybe end it at that. I was going to talk about some of the other programs under the Farm Ranch Water Infrastructure Program, dugouts, those types of things, but I think in interest of time, give the other people a chance to present that. That'll be it. Is there any last final questions? Or? So 867-5500, Randy Holman. Thank you.